How are we doing, everybody? This is episode 2 of Shorthanded Takes, a Boston Bruins podcast brought to you by Couch Guys Sports. I am Jeff Hoak. Got Kevin Perdios here and Chris Henrique here for our episode number 2. We are a week away, just about a week away from the preseason kicking off. How are we doing, guys? How are we feeling?
Feeling good. Feeling good. One day closer to hockey season.
That's all that matters. What about you, Chris? How you doing up there?
I'm gonna tell you what, I'm a little tired, but I'm ready for Bruins hockey.
You take a little nap beforehand, I was told. So a nap you don't remember, for that matter.
I feel like I got punched in the face, to be honest with you. I have no idea what closure. If everybody's like listening, I had movies before the show, and I ended up just falling asleep on the couch, but ended up in my bed. I literally feel kind of screwed up, but we're ready to go. Let's do
that. That's all that matters. That's we're ready to go. So it's kind of a packed show today. Not a lot going on, but it is a packed show. We're going to talk a little bit about the preseason coming up on Sunday. We're going to talk a little bit about the lineups that are going to be set. They just released the training camp roster today, and we're gonna date back ourselves a little bit because of the signing that happened earlier this week. We're going to look back into the 2015 draft. I know you guys love that draft so much as I do. So we're going to, at the end of the show, we are going to dig into that a little bit before we head out. But first of all, we're going to dig into the preseason. It starts this Sunday when the Bruins are going to face the Philadelphia Flyers. My question for you two is, we're going to start with you, Kevin. What are you watching for the most coming into the preseason? And what might be a player you're looking at to, do well and kind of show you something in the preseason?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot to see how it kind of unfolds here. There's a lot of question marks going into this season. Second line, we need someone to fill the role of Krejci. The second line's been an issue for as far back as we can remember. We've been always talking we need someone to play alongside Krejci. Well, we finally get someone in Hall, and then Krejci decides to leave. So once again, the second line is a point of conversation that, one of these young guys has to step up. I think it's Stanika said I saw a tweet, put on 15 pounds of muscle. That's huge. That's big. That's going to bring that physical element, and hopefully he's a little bit quicker. He gains a step or two in speed, and he can fill into that role nicely along with Hall. And then you still need another young guy to step up. So we'll see. And then I'll give him the most, shit out of anyone, but Tuukka Rask is not there. Tuukka Rask is not there to start. And who fills that role? How do they fill the role? And, that goaltending battle, or for lack of a better word, is going to be very interesting. How do these goaltenders step up, and can they pick up the slack that Rask is leaving behind? Again, I give him the most crap out of anyone, but at the end of the day, he's a very good goaltender. So when you're losing a goaltender to the quality of Rask, it's big shoes to fill.
Definitely. Chris, obviously we talked about Studnicka a little bit, and he was going to be brought up here as well. Apparently adding about 15 pounds of muscle, and has gotten a lot of praise in training camp leading up to this point. Can he play a factor for this team? Do you think he has a spot on this team?
Yeah, so I do. And what's interesting is the fact that he's going to have an opportunity where he could potentially win a spot on that second line. And, really it's Charlie Coyle's to lose. And, I'm thinking Studnicka might have that, might be the guy that actually could take that role away. I mean, the fact that, the Bruins mentioned that he needed to put on some size, and he did. And, we mentioned it briefly. I talked a little about like Debrusk in our first episode, talking about a player who kind of needs to take that next step. When has like the Bruins and like fans in the media talked about like a Debrusk going and doing something like that, taking the next step to elevate his game, where Studnicka's done that, So Studnicka is every opportunity to win that second line spot. And what's crazy too is like this is a playoff caliber team that could have a 22-year-old like a rookie leading the charge in that second line, which is ultimately one of their glaring holes. I think the other piece, though, too, to move away from like Stanika is more of like that depth scoring. They signed a bunch of guys, right? They signed Foligno, Nosek. They signed Hula. They signed all these players, but how does that really translate to their style of hockey? And then to Kevin's point, it's ultimately the goaltending. Is Ullmark really a $5 million a year goaltender? Is he truly a number one in Boston? Should be. He's, what I mean? Like, he's going to be playing for a legitimate contender. He's not in Buffalo anymore. So I think those are the three things to look out for is, what is Stanika going to do? What are those second tier players? What can they bring for offense? And is Ullmark truly, is he a question mark, or is he truly legitimate, goaltender number one?
And we speak on the goaltending, and there I said that they released a training camp roster today. 6 goaltenders on that roster: Callum Booth, Troy Grosnick, Kyle Kasier, Jeremy Swayman, obviously Linus Ullmark, and Jeremy Brodeur, who was obviously the son of Martin Brodeur. So be interesting to see what happens on the goaltending side of things. You guys talked about defense with Stanika. Forwards wise, offensively, who are we looking at to possibly step up? You got the Patrice Bergerons, obviously. You got the David Pasternoks and the Brad Marchands. Who could this be a Charlie Coyle breakout year that we're finally going to see? We've been building up for it the last couple of years. It hasn't come yet. Kevin, is it possible that this could be the year Charlie Coyle breaks out?
Oh man, I want to say yes, right? Because he grew up the town over from me. He's a Boston guy. Grew up in Weymouth. I grew up in Braintree. So you naturally root for him. You naturally want him to be, a hometown hero. But I don't know. Like I just don't know, because Charlie Coyle is a great player. I think he gets a bad rap in general. I think people expect way too much of him. He is what he is, and he's a solid third line guy, with that can flirt with second line numbers. But he serves a good role on that third line. I think that's where he has made a career and will continue to make a career, because he does a good job there. People bash him because it's Boston media. You breathe the wrong way and people are jumping down your throat. So, I like him a lot. I hope he makes that step, that next jump, kind of that breakout year. I just don't know if it's going to happen. He's not 22 anymore. He's getting up there. He's spent a while in Minnesota. He's been here for a few years now too, so he's getting up there. But reluctantly, I'm going to say yes. I think he makes the next step. And long-winded answer cut short. Yeah, I think he'll make the next step because the fan in me wants him to.
Nothing wrong with the fan of you rooting for that Weymouth kid that everyone's been rooting for. And Chris, same question to you. Can someone like a Charlie Coyle, and I just looked at the list again, and Craig Smith as well, had a good year last year, not a great year. Can either one of those have a breakout year this year?
I mean, Coyle's going to have to, if you just look at it from just say a basic piece, right? From a money standpoint, they're paying him to be that guy. Take away that, Kevin said it. He's better suited to be that third line center. And I think that in a perfect world, that's where the Bruins want him to be, but the Bruins never really addressed that second line center spot. And I truly believe that going into the offseason, the Bruins knew that David Krejci wasn't going to come back. I can't imagine that you're going into doing your roster construction and you're building your team for next year and beyond with the idea that potentially he's going to come back. I'd have to think that Sweeney knew that was the case. So you knew that, hey, look, he's not coming back, so Coyle is going to be that guy. It's kind of – I kind of look at Coyle like, if you look at the Red Sox real quick, right? You go like Bobby Dahlbeck. I mean, like, he's their first baseman. He's like the first baseman by like default. And then they go and they make these moves to get like a Schwarber to bring him in and puts a little bit of pressure and he starts to perform. I know maybe the Stanikas of the world puts the pressure on Coyle and he he performs. The Bruins are going to need him to perform and perform at a high level for that second line spot, because they really truly don't have anybody else other than maybe a Stanek who could slide in. So I truly think like that's like the number one glaring story heading into this preseason is, who's going to win that spot. And hopefully Coyle does. Hopefully Coyle last season was an aberration. He just kind of, he runs with it and he looks like the player that everybody thinks he's going to be or should be.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with that. It's just something that needs to be kept an eye on, because like you guys said, that David Krejci being gone, and, we kind of got Taylor Hall for him to have on that second line. Obviously that's not there anymore. Obviously Taylor Hall can still be that guy, but it'd be better with Krejci. And obviously you guys have seen as much as I have that Krejci's lighting it up in the Czech right now, just making the players look silly on the opposing teams over there. Quite impressive. One last thing before we move on. Another guy I just thought about for this preseason is Trent Frederick. Kind of a raw talent that we saw, take on a couple of guys during the late season. Took on Tom Wilson most notoriously. Chris, we'll start with you here. Trent Frederick, what does he have to do to become the guy that that the Bruins need him to be? Kind of that enforcer, but also, someone that's not going to get in trouble all the time on the ice and not going to be sitting in what you call the sin bin for 2 minutes every game.
What's I think unique about Frederick is that he provides some depth, and I think the one thing that he does have as well is he has that grit, and he has that kind of like that ability to not be afraid to kind of like mix it up. And I think that he has that piece that the Bruins we've kind of missed since like the days like Sean Thornton and stuff like that. But can you go a full season with this guy being basically like, that thorn in the side of an entire of other teams? So I don't know, but I think that Frederick provides them some depth. I don't view him as really being like that ultimate, like, it factor, so to speak, for like the Bruins. I think he's a good depth piece that, 3-4th line type of player, and, and kind of see where it goes from there. Who knows? Does he I think ultimately I wouldn't be surprised if he started the season down in Providence. I mean, I don't know if you guys would be surprised by that at all either. I think that might be where he kind of starts at. And I think he's, one of those guys that's going to kind of bounce between the two, unless he just goes and he has like a massive camp. But I don't know. I don't really see that. I don't know. I think everybody got kind of caught up in the Frederick hype of some of like Twitter highlights and stuff where he kind of mixed it up with some players and things like that. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't know if he's truly that difference maker the Bruins are going to need that can go and just steal a job in the preseason.
Kevin, we'll go to you on this one as well. I saw you smile when I mentioned Trent Frederick. I know you love him. I know you love the enforcer type people. Well, I'll ask you the same question. What does he have to do to, be better and possibly crack that starting roster this year?
Yeah, Chris kind of hit it right on the head here. I love that. I love the physical style of hockey. I think that, having that going away from the game, having the enforcers going away from the game, it allows guys like Tom Wilson to do what they do. Tom Wilson wouldn't be who he is if Sean Thornton was still around, because Sean Thornton would tie both hands behind his back and still bury that guy. It allows those goons to or the goon wannabes to run around and take shots at Pastas, the Martians, the whoever. And, I love Frederick being physical. I love him bringing that aspect to it. But at the end of the day, the dude's 6'2", 200 pounds. It's like, 6'2" sounds big. 200 pounds sounds big, but what he really needs to do is follow in Stanika's shoes and gain 15 pounds of muscle. He needs to bulk up a little bit. I think he'll be the 3rd, 4th line guy. I think they'll give him a chance because he is a little ball of energy that's kind of running around the ice and trying to throw his weight around. And they love that, and I love it. So I'm not gonna bash him for it. But at the end of the day, like Chris said, he needs to put the puck in the net. He needs to be. He's not going to be the physical guy. He just doesn't have the body for it, unless he puts on like 20 pounds of muscle and grows 3 inches overnight. He's not going to be that guy. He needs to put the puck in the back of the net, and he's played 42 games last year. He has 4 goals. So that's not going to cut it. So maybe he factors in on that fourth line just to bring a physical element, but he's got to demonstrate in training camp that he can put the puck in the back of the net. And I do think Chris is right that he starts off in Providence, and they're going to say the same thing. Put the puck in the back of the net and you'll come back up. Bottom line, because you're not going to be that physical guy. You don't have the size for it, basically.
No, I agree with that. And I think the biggest hype coming out when Frederick came up was, the fact that these some of the big name players were getting thrown around a little bit. And, we knew he was an enforcer down in Providence, and, and then as soon as he came up, he got in a fight with Tom Wilson. And I think that kind of started the big hype train there for Trent Frederick. I love the kid. I think he could do good stuff. I'm with you guys though. I think he's got to start down in Providence and kind of work his way back up. And like Kevin said, put the puck in the net, and you'll have your chances up here on the team. And there'll be plenty of opportunities for him to come up and play for the Boston Bruins this coming year. So on to our next aspect. And I know Chris isn't much into this. He told me to put him into the sin bin for 2 minutes if he wanted me to. So I will if he wants me to. But we're going to talk slightly about the prospect challenge that just happened over the weekend. 2 biggest names that came out of that for the Bruins were Jesper Froden and the first round pick this year, Fabian Lysell. Kevin, I know you did a little bit of research on this. Well, obviously Fabian Lysell is going to be playing in the WHL this year. We know that. It was announced that he will not be playing in the Bruins organization. He's playing up in Canada this year for the WHL. From what you read and what you saw from these 2 guys, are you confident that maybe that Don Sweeney hit on something here with a Fabian Lysell late in the first round?
I want to say yes. Like you want to say yes because he needs to. I'll factor this back to what Chris said with the Red Sox. Everyone bashes Bloom, but he's hit on some guys, but he's missed big time on other guys. So it's kind of like you need to hit here. You need to be, you need another win for you under the belt. And with Bergeron, Marchand, Pasta all kind of getting older, that window's slowly starting to close. Who's next? Who's the next guy? Like, who's the next Bergeron? Who's the next Marchand? Who's that next wave of young talent that's going to carry us for the next 10, 15 years? We kind of don't really, we have a rough idea, but we don't know. And I think Lysell has the make to be that guy, but it's the same thing. Once you go from, the AHL to the NHL, it's a big jump. That's a different animal. That's a different beast. So yeah, you can look great down in the minors and do all this great stuff, but how does that translate to the NHL? How does that translate to the pros? When you're not playing against kids your own age or 3 or 4 years around your age, how are you doing against seasoned vets? How are you doing against the Ovechkins, the Crosbys, the Bergerons, the guys that have been there for a while and know the ropes? Are you handling your own, or are you kind of lost in the crowd? And if you're lost in the crowd, that ain't going to cut it. So I think Lysell could be that talent, but it's almost too soon to tell. It's almost, I don't want to say yes and then him not even get back to the States.
No, you're right. And, the biggest thing, people gave him high praise when he was drafted, that Don Sweeney hit on him already. And obviously it's too early to tell if you have hit on someone as low, in the 20s and 30s as a pick. This kid could be something. He was really good over in Sweden where he originated from. Like I said, he won't be playing for the Providence Bruins this year or any of the new Bruins teams. He'll be in the WHL up in Canada playing. So we'll see how that goes. And quickly, Jesper Froden had a very, very good prospect challenge. He's on the training camp roster this year. So, we might see a lot of them come Sunday when they open up against the Flyers in the preseason. Before we close out the show, though, I want to, we talked about this and we talked about the drafting aspect of things. By the way, Chris, you're out of the sin bin now. Forgot all about that. So we talked about that. Zach Senyshyn, one of the 3 back-to-back picks from the 2015 draft, signed a 1-year deal worth roughly $775 million just the other day. We look back at that 2015 draft, what could have been. You had 3 straight picks. You took Zaboral, Debrusk, Senyshyn in that order. We all know who went to the New York Islanders. Guys, Chris, I'll let you go first. We'll let you vent here on the 2015 draft and what could have been and what the signing of Zach Senyshyn means for the Boston Bruins here in the coming future.
Yeah, so I mean, he's just, again, that's a AHL signing. That's someone that's going to provide depth if someone gets hurt. Kind of sucks though, because the Bruins went and completely reached for that kid. The second they drafted him, I remember that was even like the thing. There was the analysts were like, he was expected to go later in the draft, and instead Sweeney went and got him early. And kind of to Monday morning quarterback it and kind of know what you know now. Just think about like Matthew Barzal went right after this guy, like literally right after him. He is one of the most young, exciting players in the NHL. And how do you miss that? We just literally, I listened to you guys talk about, some of those young players the last segment and, how Sweeney needs to kind of hit. Sweeney struck out in 2015. That was the future. Like, that was the future that you could have begun to impact the window of where this team is right now. And I get it. Like, it's going to happen. And, teams are going to miss out on this. Many other teams have missed out on Matthew Barzal too, right? I mean, you can go and say the other teams that drafted ahead of the Bruins, but the Bruins had 3 straight picks. They had their pick, which was 14. They got the pick, which was number 13 from the Kings in that trade for Milan Lucic. And then they had the pick after theirs, which ended up being Senyshyn, which is the one that they were with Dougie Hamilton and the Flames. So, like, how do you miss on a Matthew Barzal? Like, and I'm going to look, I got my phone up. How do you miss on Kyle Connor? Kyle Connor, shit, he's better than Debrusk. You know what I mean? Like, and I like Debrusk a lot too. And I feel like that poor kid gets like a bad rap because of the fact that he's the only one of that group of players who's drafted that has really done anything for the Bruins. I like Debrusk a lot. I need Debrusk to start playing first round pick. He's getting decent money. It's like 3 and change. They missed on Thomas Chabot. They missed on Brock Bozer. They missed on like.
You got Joel Eriksson Ek in there as well. That
exactly. So like, I don't know. You had an opportunity where you could have gone and picked up some impact players, and the only thing you have out of that draft, the only thing that you can truly say that you have out of that draft is you have Jake DeBrusk, who you have that you could probably trade and bring you something back. Senyshyn is arguably probably not going to turn out to be anything other than a fringe AHL player, and the defenseman's Zaboral, like, he's not really done anything. So, I think that draft is going to be one of those that's going to kind of go down in, the Sweeney legacy. If the Bruins don't win a title or a cup rather, is it because of that draft? Did that draft truly set them backwards? And think about, they just spent a ton of money this off season. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't know. It's frustrating because, again, Monday morning quarterback, you're thinking back on it, but Matthew Barzal was there. He was there. And you let the Islanders got him.
And no, you're definitely right. And I feel the same way. I have a friend on the radio show that there's a massive Bruins fan. And anytime you mention the 2015 draft, it just another stake in his heart. But on my radio show this morning, we talked to Evan Marinofsky of Bruins podcast in CLNS Media, and he was saying basically that if you would have drafted Barzell in that 2015 draft, you most likely would have gone on to win that 2019 Stanley Cup that you lost in 7 games to the St. Louis Blues. If you want a Monday morning quarterback, it like Chris is talking about, and that's the way you got to look at it now. If you draft Barzell or any of, let's just stick with Barzell, you would have most likely won that 2019 Stanley Cup against St. Louis Blues, most likely.
I just think a lot of the moves that they made would have been different leading up to all that too. You know, just think about all of the corresponding moves this team has made over the last couple of years. You know what I mean? Like, you go and draft him. Do you go and get Nash from the Rangers a few years later, you know, at the deadline? You're like, what are some of the other moves that you might not have made? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to go and like bash Sweeney, because I think that Sweeney, you know what I mean? Like, he's tried to do things to impact the Bruins. He's tried to do things to make this team better. And I give him a lot of credit for that. You know, but there are just some moves as of late where, you know, he did a good job in to kind of like restock the system to now it's like, all right, you know, they spent again a ton of money this off season to fill that bottom of the roster, where what if they had guys already in place? You could have used that money to fill the top half of the roster and get yourself a second line center, and then Coyle could have slotted down. So, you know, I don't know. It sucks because I like Barzal a lot, and you know, he would have looked so much better in black and gold, but then they would have got him and he would have sucked, and Sedin picked, and he would have been, you know,
Barzell on the Islanders, probably, you know, that's probably what he would. And Kevin, before we get to you, there were 4 different all-stars taken after those 3 picks for the Bruins, like Brock Bosser, Travis Konecny, Thomas Chabot, and Matthew Barzell. That's besides the point, though. Kevin's been waiting patiently. Let's hear what you got to say, Kevin. Don't go too hard on Don Sweeney. I know this hurts you a lot, but go ahead. The floor is yours for this one.
Yeah, you know, it's I remember that draft. I remember sitting in my parents' living room watching it. Like, I remember, like, all right, this is the next wave of guys. We have 3 picks in a row. You have the chance to get 3 franchise-altering players. You know, like these 3 guys. It's very rare that comes about. Like, you have your guy, all right, he's our first-round guy, he's our second-round guy, he's our third-round guy. They had 3 first-round picks in a row. Like, and I don't want to say you whiffed, because I do like Debrusk, and I do think Chris is right. He gets a bad rap because he's the only one that's came out of that. He's the only one guy that's done something with the Bruins. Like, he gave us something, but now all of a sudden he's shouldered with having to carry the entire 2015 draft class, and it's not fair to him. He's a good player. I like him a lot. I think he plays a huge role with the Bruins. The Barzal thing is, you know, that's I don't know. You know,
no words for that one.
Yeah, that one's just kind of like, I don't know what you're doing, man. He was young. You didn't expect him to take this next step. Senyshyn, you know, I think Senyshyn's there. I think he turns out to be. I do think he makes the Bruins at some point. He's only 24, still pretty young. There's still some room for him to kind of be like, all right, we're giving you leeway here. You have to kind of get going now. You know, through just looking at his stats now, 18 games with Providence last year, 7 goals, 6 assists, 13 points. It's not bad. It's not, you know, again, it's no Barzal or anything, but that could translate to a 3rd-line guy. You know, you never know. That could translate to a 4th-line guy, something that that plays a role with the big club. But, you know, my hot take, I'm going to have a hot take here, and you guys can put me in the sin bin or wherever you want to deal with it after, but Don Sweeney's job is on the line. Don Sweeney's job is on the line. If you don't win this year, What's your next wave of players? You fanned on the 2015 draft. That should have been it. Your next line of guys, your next wave of talent coming in should be taken over right now. And where we can't get past the second line. We don't know what our second line looks like. You know what I mean? Like that is, and we're supposed to contend for a Stanley Cup. We don't know who's standing between the pipes. We're supposed to contend for a Stanley Cup. That falls on Don Sweeney, and Chris is right. He's tried, but close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. So you gotta either shit or get off the pot. And from what I've seen, if the Bruins decided to move on in the next year or two from Sweeney, I don't know if I could blame them. Do I think it's the right move? Maybe. You know what? But if they decide, you know what, we're going in a different direction, I see where they're coming from. I understand that move. If they stick with him, all right, that's their guy. But I think his job's on the line.
Chris, Kevin just threw a penalty shot at us. So
yeah, I don't think his job is so much on the line. But so here's the thing: if his job's on the line, then so is Cam Neely.
Oh, 100%. Yes, they're one. Yes, yep, you're exactly right. They're one and the same.
I guess my question would be is like, what constitutes, a failed season this year? Because I think, and we talked about it in our first episode, we mentioned that we think that they're a good team, but we don't think they're necessarily a true Stanley Cup winning team. So I wonder what would be that, kind of breaking point for the Jacobs family to pull the trigger and say, you know what, we're going to move on. Again, I think right now the biggest knock is this team doesn't have that pipeline of true young players. They have some young players, but they don't have like a true pipeline. And it felt like for a while that they did. Maybe it's just more of like on the surface type of thing, but I thought for a little bit that the Bruins had like a pipeline of good young players.
You know why? It felt that way? Because Sweeney got on the phone with everyone in the Red Sox organization. It was like, all right, how do we dupe this entire fan base into thinking we have good prospects? Remember Henry Owens with the Red Sox? Is that guy alive?
That's a good question.
That guy was shoved down our throat for so long. And you're exactly right, Chris. This is what happened. They talked to each other. All right, how do we dupe this fan base into thinking I did a good job? But when it comes to the point of, okay, well, where is everyone? Oh, well, we don't have anyone. It's a smoke and mirrors, it seemed like. And you're right. It felt like for a while, the next wave is here, the next wave's coming, the next wave's coming. Well, where the hell is it?
Yeah, and you mentioned Henry Owens there for a second, and that's Mr. Walks a lot right there. That the Sox sent to Yankee Stadium and just absolutely imploded there. And yeah, we talk about the top prospects. I mean, I'm looking at a list of top 10 right now that came out after the 2021 draft, and I mean, you got Studnicka, that's number 3, and Lysell that was just drafted this year, and he's the number 1 top prospect. John Beecher's the only other one that I really know of that, I've heard about down in Providence. All the other ones are kind of, either going back to college for a year or two, or they haven't panned out. And, if you're asking me, the biggest bust out of the 3 out of that 2015 draft was Zaboral. I hated that pick from the get-go, and I still do to this day. Senyshyn, I think, still has a little bit of time left that he can get going. Like Kevin said, he's only 24. Anything's possible. Jake Debrusk, like you said, he's getting a lot of hate because he's gonna be the one carrying that 2015 class. He's the only one that's made it to the NHL and played more games than the other 2 combined. But, just thinking about Monday morning quarterbacking it, like Chris says, just thinking about the fact that Barzal went the pick after that, it's just heartbreaking seeing today him beat the Bruins in the playoffs the way he played, and he played out of his absolute mind this playoffs. And it's too bad to see that obviously, Tampa Bay had to, go and wash that all away, but that's something different for another day. You guys have any final thoughts though, before we wrap everything up, this, you got any hot takes, predictions for, before next Tuesday? Anything about Sunday's Flyers game, or what you got?
Yeah, when is Vakanai, or however the hell you say his last name, when is he going to start? When is he going to step up? Because you hear about him all the time. He's always that like 7th, 8th defenseman that's going to take the next step, quotation fingers. When's he taking that next step? We want to kill the 2015 draft, but he was also one of the, another top player that was drafted. When's he taking that next step? That's number one. And number two, quickly to kind of jump back to that 2015 draft. Imagine if they would have traded those 3 first-round picks to get Noah Hannafin, which is who they wanted all along. They want to get into the top 5. I'll think he ultimately went third. A completely different narrative. We're not even having this conversation.
No.
It's unfortunate that he was able to do that. Sweeney tried to trade those picks. So he tried incredibly hard, but there was so much talent in that draft that even at the top half of the draft that he wasn't able to make a move. It's just unfortunate that his scouting department and the players in his front office missed the rest of that really good young talent towards the rest of the draft. And that's what's frustrating. And that's the shit that's going to get that dude fired in 2 years if he doesn't start to change and identify some of these players. So hopefully Lysell is that one of those players that they can utilize as, hey, an under the radar type move. And kind of like, Pasternak. Pasternak was picked in the later half of the draft, wasn't he? I think it was like 25th overall.
Yeah. Yep.
So you can find those players. Maybe they've done that, and we're going to start to see a new evolution of players. They're going to need to, because when the window closes and these players get older and the value to potentially trade them is kind of nullified at that point, I don't want to have a bunch of players who, it's kind of like David Backes. I don't have a bunch of like 36-year-old David Backes skating around the ice that have this like incredibly, inflated contract with no value to trade, and you got to go and piggyback either prospects or picks to get them out of here to replenish and bring something in. So I don't think it's too far-fetched that Sweeney could be on the hot seat, but not quickly or right away. But back to my first point, it's time for that dude to step up. It's time for Vaakanainen to step up and let's see what he can kind of bring.
Yeah, Vaakanainen was ranked the 6th prospect right now, as of right now. So I don't really know what he played. I think a little bit this year up in the NHL. I think towards the end when I can't remember who got injured during the playoffs, and he played a little bit. But
the thing is, who didn't get hurt in the playoffs? If you were on the blue line, you got hurt. So.
It was just a rough time all around this past postseason. Kevin, any final thoughts? Any venting session you need to give us? Kind of like what Vaakanainen is doing for us right now apparently is nothing. So what you got for us before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'll kind of finish with one thought and then one hot take. Another hot take, I guess, will be my second of the show. Senyshyn, I think this is his year. Like this is the year that they're kind of like, all right, either prove that you can be a, factor into this team this year, or they trade him. That I don't think they go on past this year. I think this is kind of a year of like, all right, we gave you your money. It's fine to be able to be dealt. If we have to trade you, it's not going to cripple a cap or anything. I think it was even like under $1 million or something. It was some pretty good money. So I think they look at it and it's like, all right, you need to show us this year, because we're not waiting around for you. We're not gonna let you get to north of 25, they're late 20s, and some other teams like, you're too young or you're too old now. They're gonna try to trade him while he has some value to a team that thinks they can develop him even more, do a better job at developing him. My hot take is, Chris asked earlier in the show, what documents a failure season? And to answer that, I think if you miss the playoffs, that's 100% a failure season, because no matter what team in Boston, no matter where you are, if you miss the playoffs in Boston, this fan base will crucify you. They will chew you up and spit you out, because that's just not acceptable, period. So if you have the Bergerons, the Marchands, the Pasternak, and you miss the playoffs, that's a failure season. Turn it around, carrying off of that. If you're in that case where it looks like, oh boy, we might miss the playoffs here, we're probably not going to get in. Patrice Bergeron is dealt to a cup contending team to bring in some prospects.
Oy vey.
That's I think it's that friggin' Ray Bork-esque type deal where it's like, all right, we gotta go get this guy another cup. He deserves it. We couldn't do it for him. We're gonna flip him to someone and get a bunch of prospects or a bunch of guys back to get this next wave going.
I think he just gave Chris a heart attack over there.
Dude, I listen, I'm going on record. I do not want this to happen. I don't want this to happen.
You got so
I'm
close to
not
the mic.
Just saying.
Like an experience that I had from the Chinese food, or if I really just heard that. You know what though? I have to give you credit, because sometimes you have to go and you got to make these bold statements, and you know what I mean. Like, if they're out of it, is it that far fetched though? You know what I mean? Like, if the Bruins are truly not in it this year, and they're not a contending team, and he's a free agent to be, is that truly far fetched? And I know a lot of Bruins fans, if you would have polled them, I bet you 9 out of 10 would think that you're absolutely crazy. But sometimes, like, we fall way too in love with the players in Boston. Like, we overrate every single prospect. What, it doesn't matter what sport it is. It doesn't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever sport, like, prospects and players. Marcus Smart, you know, like, is the best Celtic shooter, you know, in the history of to wear the C's uniform. You know what I mean? Like, every Red Sox prospect and Red Sox Twitter, you would think is a number one prospect in any system. I love Mac Jones, and I think he's gonna be great, but he's not Tom Brady. So let's go and, you know, let's pump the brakes. And then with, like, the Bruins, you know, yes, love Patrice Bergeron, should be a Bruin for life, should never wear another sweater. But guess what? Neither should have Ray Bork.
Neither should Zdeno Chara, if you want to go that far.
Right.
Now he's back where it all began. Now,
Exactly.
You know, the Islanders. So
I think, well, you know, from my standpoint, a lot of what I'm saying is you make that move because you missed in the draft. You know, you missed that move because you need to just get more guys in to fuel that next wave, because you whiffed on a bunch of guys in the draft. You know, you missed the Barzals of the 2015 draft, like we keep talking about. That's why you make the move. You're tanking, or you're not tanking. You're not making the playoffs. You got an aging vet that's dedicated his entire career to this organization. He deserves more than one Stanley Cup. The city of Boston will always love that guy. You know, you make that type of move because he's going into free agency. We don't know if we have prospects to fuel this next, you know, wave of players, the next, you know, Bruins team. You know, all those pieces add up to you have to do it if that's the case. I don't want to see it. But if it's that situation comes up 4 months, 5 months, 6 months from now, maybe Sweeney's like, you know what? I got to do something, because if I don't, my ass is looking for another job anyways. So let me see if I can go get something. And maybe there's a team out there that's willing to overpay for Bergeron, because he is that missing piece. And now all of a sudden you get a face of a franchise type guy when he's 22. You know, you never know. You have to explore it. It sucks, but if you tank or if you stink this year and you don't make the playoffs, it's a conversation to be had for sure, I think.
So what you're saying is Bergeron for Eichel straight up then?
Oh man. So this is, I was going to bring up another guy. So I went to Merrimack College. So Hockey East guy, we got to see Eichel play as a true freshman at BU. Unbelievable talent. But there's another guy from BU that we got that I liked a lot, who's in the Bruins system, who just hasn't. Jacob, I'm going to screw up his name, Forsbackas Carlson or something. JFK.
There you go. That's easier. I like that.
JFK. I did think this kid was going to be legit. He was, you know, he got a cup of coffee with the Bruins a couple years back, but never really amounted to anything. So I want to see Eichel in the Bruins. Ooh, yes. Does it mean Bergeron has to go? Gee, man, I don't know. Like, that's why Don Sweeney gets paid the big bucks and not me.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, that's why they keep us on the podcast here. The Shorthanded Takes podcast, the Boston Bruins podcast. That's going to do it for us today, though. Guys, when we come back on Tuesday, or when we come back on Wednesday, when this releases, when our next episode releases, we'll be talking about actual hockey. There's a hockey game on Sunday, Philadelphia Flyers and Boston Bruins. So we will, break down what we saw and what went right and who looked the best in that first preseason game when we come back next week. Guys, it's been real fun. Episode 2, episode 3 will be out next week. This once again has been Shorthanded Takes, a Boston Bruins podcast brought to you by Couch Guys Sports. Thank you for all listening, and you guys have a great night.